Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Basel Pod. I'm Sam Basel, joined once again by Jordan Laube. And Jordan, this is episode 6 of our 2025 NFL divisional breakdowns. On our last episode, we talked about the NFC South, which, maybe not competitive in the grand scope of the NFL, still has a lot of interesting questions around it. You can check that out on houseenterprise.com, on our YouTube channel, and on Spotify. But today, we are talking about the AFC South. In kind of a similar position, I don't really see any of these teams being a strong threat in the AFC at large, but amongst each other, it is going to be very contentious. So, Jordan, how are you doing, and how are you feeling in general about the AFC South?
I'm doing good. AFC South, I think, is more set in stone than a lot of people think it is. I've seen some talks about the Jaguars, winning the division. We've heard the Colts before, the whole Daniel Jones thing pop up, which I'm still so friggin' mad about that, and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
The Titans are a sneaky team who's got a young, good QB. I think it's a lot more set in stone than that, and we'll get into it as we go along. But there's some good teams in this division, and there's some bad teams in this position. And by the end of the season, it might be a 1-3 split of one good team and 3 below average the bad teams.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into our first team, the Houston Texans. Last season, Houston won the division at a 10-7 record, commendable. Obviously, room to grow, and they were led by a guy that you talked about in our last episode. Comparing him to Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. So obviously, another year for Stroud in Houston. What do you feel like he can work on and grow into as, in his journey as a great NFL quarterback?
I think mitigating pressure is going to be the biggest thing for him because he was pressured a lot more often last season than his rookie year. And people think he took a step back, which, sure, fine. His offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL. I think the only one pressure rate allowed-wise, the only one worse than that was the Seahawks, and they were abysmal at almost every position across that line. So he had to deal with a lot of pressure that he wasn't used to because his first year he had pretty decent protection, middle of the road level. And I think that a lot of the shortcomings he had kind of fell with Bobby Slowick, the former offensive coordinator, former PFF analyst. So it kind of hurt me to see a PFF guy get canned after 2 years, but rightfully so. Great offensive line, but he could not adapt at all throughout the season. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think what's going to help CJ Stroud is he is going to be able to make protection adjustments, hot route when he needs to, and if he doesn't like a play at all, he can change the play at the line of scrimmage entirely from pass to run to pass, play action to RPO screen, whatever he wants to do. He's going to have full reign to do what he wants. And that's really what you see a lot of these top QBs are able to do. I know I ragged on him a little bit, but Jalen Hurts is actually one of the best at being able to adjust out of a unfavorable pass look or run look and switch into something favorable opposite, run pass. I saw a great video. They were in a tray trip formation where the tight end was isolated on the line and they had 3 receivers to the other side, and it was gonna be a pass play, it looked like, or something. And defense was in a man lock look, and they had a linebacker and a safety walked up on the line of scrimmage against the whole right side of their offensive line. So Hurts checked it into a run, and Saquon broke out for a 40-yard run in the playoff game against the Rams. He has great ability to do that, and now we're going to get to see CJ Stroud, who's one of the sharpest processors in this league, get to do that. This offense is going to go to another level with the changes on the offense. And with the changes, last year, like I alluded to with the Bobby Slowick point, they were too late to make changes, and especially within the run game. So early on in the season, they ran a lot more zone styles, like inside zone, wide zone, split zone, outside zone, whatever. There's a lot of different variations of zone. They ran a shit ton of those, and they didn't run many gap or man schemes. So before week 13, from weeks 1 to 12, the Texans were 28th in EPA per rush, or 5th worst in the NFL. After they made that change from week 13 to week 18, and they started running more power, counter, duo, blast type runs, they jumped from 28th to 11th in that category. And I think that's going to be a huge proponent. Nick Caley is coming from the Rams, who they run more duo and blast than anybody else in the league. So he's coming from that McVay tree, and they're going to run even more of that now than they even did in the back half or the back third or back quarter of last year. I think that running game and having a more sound running game cater to who you have in the backfield and who you have up front is going to give CJ Stroud better situations, because the Texans were one of the worst teams on first and second down success rate, and they were middle of the road on third down, but that was because they were in third and long more than anyone else in the league. So you'll expect that third down number to go up back into the top 10 territory now that this run game, at least in theory, should be a lot better. And I know Joe Mixon has his injury and his timetable is like unknown. Like he could be back week 2 or he could be done for the year. It's been very like murky on that. Nick Chubb, who's kind of like, it's so sad because he was so friggin' dominant in his prime, but now he's kind of like back burner on that. He's going to be the main bell cow. Woody Marks is going to fill in here and there. Dameon Pierce obviously is going to thrive in this type of system. He's not a zone runner. He's very much a gap runner. And when he had his awesome rookie season, that's what they ran a lot of. So Dameon Pierce might even get some burn. And he's still young. I think he's still like 25 years old, maybe 26. But, they have a good running back room. They retooled the offensive line. It's not good still, but the offensive line looks a little better. But overall, just CJ Stroud having more control, improvements in the run game, and absolutely loading up on this receiver room this offense is going to be better regardless of how this O-line does, I think.
Yeah, and so, we've talked about a lot rookie quarterbacks, sophomore quarterbacks, but third-year quarterbacks, in general. Obviously, everyone's got, different goals depending on where their team is at, where, the type of player that they are. But for you, especially that you're talking about, he's got a good team, a good offense around him now. Like, how much more control do you feel like CJ Stroud should be exerting in this game plan?
I think he should, obviously, not making the game plans himself.
Yeah, not
but
drama
I think,
plays.
Yeah, but I think, doing what Brady and Belichick did, right? Where, Brady, at the beginning of every week would sit down with Bill and be like, hey, I like this concept a lot against this look. Or, hey, this team is really good at shutting this down and we run it a lot. Let's use it as a wrinkle this week. So this way we're not running it as much. So when it does come up, it's kind of unexpected and takes them by surprise, right? I think CJ and Nick Caley having that connection is going to be paramount. And I think Nick Caley wants to trust him to do that because they trusted Matt Stafford to do that. And he's done a really good job of that his entire career, of making those slight adjustments week by week. And I think it says a lot that a first-year offensive coordinator is giving CJ Stroud the tools to say, hey, if you don't like something, it's all you, dude. You figure it out. And I don't think that would happen without CJ being involved in the game plan and having some control over it.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the defensive unit. A lot of improvements. Where do you feel like the Texans defense will rank among, just the league in general in 2025?
If I could put money on it, I would say top 5. And if the odds were long enough, I would put them as the best defense in the NFL. D'Amico Ryans has completely transformed this defense. There's a lot of really good young talent and savvy veterans on this team. I think this might be one of the best defenses we preview all year. You have Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson Jr., who are two freaks at their position. Will Anderson was a man as a rookie, and Derek Stingley, since recovering from his injuries early in his career, has blossomed into a top 3 corner in the NFL. Both of them are awesome. Will Anderson is probably going to be a top 5 edge by the time the season's over, and that's a tough group to break into. So that's really good. And then you have some veteran studs. You have Danielle Hunter, who has been awesome his entire career, minus 1 or 2 years he had injuries. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson, I know he's got, some injury things here and there, but he looks like he's pretty cleared up. Those are 2 veterans. CJ's won a Super Bowl before, so he brings in that Super Bowl presence into this locker room. Danielle Hunter has been around for years and has always been dominant, so you have that going along with that. And then there's lots of young talent. Jalen Petrie, safety, nickel hybrid, has just gotten better and better every single year and is pushing to be one of the best safeties in the NFL. Kamari Lassiter had a lot of picks last year, which was really nice to see as a rookie. I was not as high in him as other people coming out of Georgia, but he proved that he can play in this league. And it's not that I didn't doubt his ability. I doubted his ability to start right away, and he proved me wrong there. So he did really well. Similar guy, Kalen Bullock, as a free safety, has played pretty relatively well last year in a starting role. And Henry Tuoto, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I could be wrong. But just like a gritty, solid linebacker who just kind of rounds out this defense of young guys who are good and keeping this defense able to just rush 4 and drop 7 and have fun with it because they don't blitz a lot because they don't have to. I mean, they have a sick defensive line top to bottom, and that starts with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on the edges, which is great. But as far as their ranks and how they played in 2024, and pretty much it's the same whole unit coming back, so they should improve. They were 6th in EPA per play allowed, 7th in EPA per dropback allowed, and 6th in EPA per rush allowed. And then success rate, they were 4th in total success rate, 2nd in dropback success rate, and 14th in rush success rate. Like, this is just top to bottom, one of the best defenses in the league, and probably will, I would bet money, finishes top 5 this year.
Absolutely. And let's get into your dark horse here. It's a wide receiver. It's going to be a guy that CJ Stroud is going to be finding a lot downfield this year, and that's Christian Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of these dark horses that we've talked about on the show are guys that have had fantastic, years leading up to 2024, but may have missed, 2024 or a portion of it due to injury or other issues. And so Christian Kirk obviously had a broken collarbone for half the season last year, but I mean, he's had some highly efficient seasons in the years leading up to that. So what do you feel like we're going to get out of him in terms of a Texans option here?
Yeah, he fills an immediate need left by Tank Dell, who I love Tank Dell. He's one of my favorite players in the league, but 2 gruesome injuries in a row. He's obviously going to miss all of 2025. Unsure of his status for 2026. So I think getting a veteran receiver like Christian Kirk, who has played out wide in the slot, pretty much exclusively a slot receiver now at this point, but could play outside if you needed, was a really good get for this team. As you said, was hurt half of last year, but 2023 was his most efficient season. Almost 14 yards a catch, over 2 yards per route run, basically 4.5 yards after catch per reception, a 10.7 ADOT average depth of target, which is pretty good. 34 first downs and 104.5 passer rating when targeted. Like, all good numbers. Those are solid. That's what you want from someone like Christian Kirk. And with that was when he was in Jacksonville, where he was the number 1 target besides Evan Ingram when he had his breakout year, right? So this was Christian Kirk at his peak. Like, this was when he was the guy being targeted in this offense. He had some guys that he was working with on this offense. I believe Zay Jones was in that group, and Zay Jones had a really good year. And that might be something we touch on a little bit later as we cover another team. But, he's going to be surrounded by really good talent. You have Nico Collins, who, in my opinion, is a top 5 receiver and is like the closest thing we have in the NFL right now to Julio Jones from a size, athleticism, and just ball skills type player. Like, he's the closest we're going to get to Julio Jones. And I don't know if there's anyone else in the league like him from that skill set. And then you have basically the diet version of him that they just drafted in Jaden Higgins, who is just a freak. And then they get his teammate, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Like, this is a really good receiving core just with those 4. And they traded away Mechie because they didn't need Mechie. And obviously Tank Dell's hurt. So when Tank Dell is healthy, if he somehow gets healthy at the end of this year, you're looking at a 5-deep receiver room that could all be starters on any other team in the league. Like, just nuts. So with how deep it is, he shouldn't be the leading target. He shouldn't be getting the most attention. So he's going to get opportunities to make good on those targets. And talking about replacing Tank Dell within this offense, we're going to go through the past 2 years when he's gotten hurt. And after he gets hurt is a smaller sample size. So there's some gray area, but that's why we look at EPA, because it gives you just raw efficiency, right? So before Tank Dell got hurt in 2023, this offense was 7th in EPA per dropback. After he got hurt, they dropped to 26th, or the 7th worst. Okay. So, 1 year, small sample size, whatever. Let's look at last year because this is when the passing offense was not as good year round. Okay. So before he got hurt in 2024 in that Chiefs game when his leg literally got obliterated.
Yep.
They were 20th in EPA per dropback. So they dropped off pretty significantly from the year before, but still okay. That's not terrible, but it's not good either. After that injury, they dropped to 30th or the third worst afterwards, which someone dropping 20th or 30th, you might be like, it's only 10 spots. It's not as bad as the year before. When you look at the raw EPA metrics, they dropped 0.22 points of EPA per play. That's the same equivalent. The Ravens were the number one offense this year. If the Ravens dropped 0.22 points, they would go from first to 15th. They would drop 14 slots and would be middling back of the road in the league. Like, that is from a EPA point-wise perspective, that is a massive drop-off, and it can't be overstated enough what Tank Dell means to this offense. So slotting in a veteran like Christian Kirk with a very similar skill set, and he's a bit more durable besides that broken collarbone, like, I think this offense isn't going to miss a beat with Kirk in there. And he might be able to do some things that Tank Dell may not be able to do in terms of understanding zones coverage better, being able to pace his routes a little bit better and know when he's getting open in the scheme, and just be a solid possession guy. Because, like, he doesn't have the burst anymore. Like, that's where Tank Dell thrives. His burst is unbelievable. But he's still got that, like, he's just reliable. And you need a guy like that in an offense like this, especially that's going to run a lot of condensed formations, a lot of play action where CJ Stroud is turning his back. So you need guys to understand where they need to fit in the route package to get open at the right time. So when CJ Stroud gets his head around, it's okay, he's there. Get rid of it.
Absolutely. And so this Texans team, I mean, since the 2010s, I mean, they've been in and out of the playoffs. They've had some good seasons. They've had their ups and downs. If they make the playoffs this year, it would be their third consecutive playoff appearance.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to finally put it all together and become a serious contender in the AFC?
I think this offensive line needs to play as a unit. And I think that's the one glaring like issue with this roster is this offensive line. Like, yeah, you can point to Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce's history over the past couple of years. You know, you could look at the run game, but a lot of that starts with the offensive line. And if they can't all work together and play at a high level, I'm not sure what else this team is going to be able to do to get the most out of CJ Stroud and out of this very deep receiving room. Like, if we go through this offensive line, Ariante Ursary, rookie, second round pick, but looks pretty solid. Like, early shades of Donald Penn in his pedigree. At least that's what I saw when I was scouting him. Donald Penn was at one point one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. So they got him in the second round, really good value. Lincoln Tomlinson, he was on that Seattle line last year. That was abysmal, but he was probably the best out of the interior three. That gave them a lot of issues. But that's not saying much. He was fine and should be fine here. We'll see. Jake Andrews from New England claimed off waivers. A backup guy, should not be starting, but he's slated as a starter with Juice Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson backing him up. We'll see if one of them might be able to take that spot from him, but we'll see. Ed Ingram from Minnesota, they got in a trade. I have no idea why they made this trade. Ed Ingram was the weakest spot on that offensive line last year. And has been his entire career. I mean, we didn't talk about it in the Vikings episode, but their draft history is horrible, especially 2022, and he was part of that really bad 2022 class. And then Titus Howard. I personally, like, Blake Fisher has struggled, and I didn't think he was NFL ready when he got drafted and he got forced to play a lot. But I think best case scenario is moving one of Titus Howard or Blake Fisher into that right guard spot and let the other play right tackle and just see what happens because Ed Ingram is just bad. Now, granted, a little bit of a different run scheme. Not that much different because KOC does come from that Rams coaching tree, but he does run a little bit more zone. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how Ed Ingram does in a much heavier gap scheme, but I don't know if that's really going to help him, especially when it comes to pass pro, because he's one of the worst pass protecting guards in the league. And that's why you trade from you trade someone for pass protection. You'll trade them for run blocking, especially a team that's going to be as pass heavy as these guys are.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at their schedule, I've kind of asked you this for, a couple of other teams, but what is the point in their schedule? So they have let's go in their first 5 games of the season. They have a bye week 6. They start off at the Rams, then they host the Bucks, then they head to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, host the Titans, and then head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, and then they have a bye week 6. Coming out of that bye, or actually let's say going into that bye, what's a solid record for Houston?
I think 3-2 is fine because you're playing Ravens on the road. That's going to be a really tough, scrappy game, and you got embarrassed by them last season on Christmas. So I don't know if that's going to be a win. It might be a closer game than last year. At least it should be on paper. But I don't think they get that win just because it's in Baltimore and it's right before the bye week. I think they have to win one against the Rams or the Bucks. If I had to put money on it, I would say they would beat the Bucks, especially because, like we said earlier today and on last episode, this Bucks defense is young and scrappy, and I think this offense is just going to be more tailor-suited to take on a defense like that than the Rams, who were just absolutely dominant at the end of last year, which we'll talk about in the NFC West episode. Then they play the Jags and Titans. Those should both be easy divisional wins. The Jags might give them a couple of issues if that offense clicks, but I don't think defense is going to keep up with the Texans at all. So, and then they go into that bye week and they come out against the Seahawks, 49ers, Broncos, Jags, and Titans for the next 5 games. Like, again, that could be another 3-2 stretch. This team could be 6-4 or 7-3 heading into the final 7-game stretch, which I think is manageable. They play some tough teams in that run, but it's definitely manageable. They can finish 10-7 again, 11-6, maybe even 12-5.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into a team that I know you're gonna be a little bit more contentious about. That being the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, the big story for the Colts this late in the offseason is the fact that Daniel Jones has been named the starter over Anthony Richardson. For you, what do you think led to this decision? Like what you've heard, and what are your thoughts on it?
I think they're looking for, and I'm putting it in quotes, consistency. I think they just don't want the wild card of, oh, he's going to hit a 60-yard bomb on a rope and score a touchdown for us, and the next play he's going to put a pass right into the linebacker's hands who didn't move, right? Like, they want someone who can get the offense in a groove and get the offense flowing, but then why Daniel Jones? Because if anything, he doesn't do that. Outside of 2022, he is just bad. He's consistent, but being consistent isn't always mean you're good. Like, you can be consistent and dog shit. Like the Browns. Like, you can be like, they're consistently, we can rely on them to be bad pretty much guarantee year over year, right? So, at least, like, and same thing with the Lions until Dan Campbell came in. You could pretty much bank they were going to be bad every year except when Stafford and Golden Tate were running it up in the early 2010s, mid 2010s, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so, but my bigger issue is why do you take a quarterback 2 years ago, 4th overall, which we all knew was a project, didn't have the snaps, didn't have the accuracy, obviously had all the tools to be a top 5 quarterback in terms of just physicals and arm talent, like just a freak athlete with size, speed, everything you want. Why would you start him right away? He gets hurt 1 year, gets hurt another year, plays 15 games total, and then you give him a competition in year 3 and you don't give him the go-ahead to help build his confidence? Like, I figured they brought in Daniel Jones as a pseudo competition and to say, hey, we kind of think you around this category, you going to step up or not? And maybe that's more of an indictment on Anthony Richardson not being able to overcome that. If he makes the correct protection call against the Ravens, and I don't know if this is going to be a real possibility, and he doesn't get hurt, and he plays that whole first half, or at least makes his hot read and throw, hey, I understand protection, hot's coming from this side, let me just get it out to the flat, even if it doesn't gain anything. Like, if he makes one correct decision, I wonder if this is even a debate, and he's the starter, and Daniel Jones is going to be the backup. But he gets hurt, Daniel Jones plays decent in both of his preseason games, Anthony Richardson plays well also, but I just don't for the life of me, I can't understand the process. Like, fine, if you think Daniel Jones gives you a shot and you're going to run an offense similar to the 2022 Giants, where he's just going to dink and dunk and he's going to have one or two reads and you're not going to ask him to create outside of that, fine. Like, do that, because Anthony Richardson has proven he can't do that.
Yeah.
But also, has that expectation ever been set on Anthony Richardson saying, hey, we just need you to look at one or two things and throw it here and that's it? Like, based on his play, I don't think it has. Like, they were asking him week 1 against the Texans in 2023 to make really complex reads, like stuff that college quarterbacks don't even do. And we're talking about some of the top college quarterbacks. Like, there are some that are taught to read one side of the field or just read one or two players on the defense. Like, they're asking Anthony to go through a 3-4 man progression before finding his target, and he did well with it before that injury his rookie year. So I'm shocked. Look at this. I'm shocked that this was the decision that was made. I'm not shocked they brought someone in, but I'm shocked that they're going with Daniel Jones, because statistically, he's been one of the worst quarterbacks since he's entered the league. And he was a middling quarterback coming out when he was, 6th overall? Like, He was worse than Richardson. Richardson just didn't have the sample size. Daniel Jones did. Like, it just didn't none of this makes sense.
Yeah, I don't really understand this move that a lot of NFL teams have done I want to say, last 5 years. I mean, not all. I could probably name a handful of them, max, but they do this weird thing where they're trying to think of a system in which it already worked. I mean, I guess the Favre-Rodgers thing, where, they start off, you have the guy that is going to be your future, but you also have your vet who's going to start and kind of lay the groundwork for how this future guy will be the franchise guy later on.
Mm-hmm.
But the way a lot of these NFL teams have been doing it now is with the way that the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers thing, I could be rewriting history here, so please let me know if I am. But I mean, there was a little bit more confidence in both of the guys in that system from the front office perspective.
Yeah.
It feels like, obviously the fans were not happy once Aaron Rodgers kind of took the helm, and then they obviously started liking him, classic cycle. But for me, it seems like a lot of these veteran younger guy comparisons or younger guy pairings, they just lack so much confidence. I think of teams like the Jets with Aaron Rodgers in his second year. You know what I mean? There was really no one under him. And then the Jets again with Joe Flacco, and then the Browns with Joe Flacco, and then the Colts with Matt Ryan and
Joe Flacco.
And then I see this current one, and it's okay, so you got Daniel Jones trying to, kind of build some consistency with this offense until Anthony Richardson is ready to take over. But Daniel Jones is barely even a veteran. He's 28 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I don't even think you're trying to do this weird thing that's not even effective, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's very, very strange to me.
It's frustrating. And I just want to run through some numbers. Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson over the past 2 years have had the worst passer rating. And Anthony Richardson is worse than Daniel Jones when it comes to passer rating. And I know passer rating isn't the end all be all when it comes to stats, but I didn't want to run through 5 to 10 different stats for every season Daniel Jones has been in the league. So this is a good encompassing stat, and it shows a trend, right? So if we look at Daniel Jones when he's clean versus when he's pressured, passer rating year by year since he's entered the league since 2019. So in 2019, and mind you, he has never had a passer rating over 100 in his career. When kept clean, not even his total passer rating, when kept clean, he's never eclipsed 100. So that speaks volumes right there. Okay. So, and if they say, oh, the offensive line is better, this is the best offensive line he's ever had in his career, that doesn't matter, because when he's kept clean, he can't even break 100, which is the bare minimum, I feel when someone's kept clean, right? So at least a good quarterback. So 96.8 drops to 72.2 in 2019. That's a 24.6 point difference. Okay. I'm just going to do rough numbers from here on out so we don't waste time. Basically, 93 passer rating drops to 56, a 37-point difference. 93 to a 65, 28-point difference. 97, this was 2022, so this was his best season. 97.4 to 83.8, a 3.6% difference. So I'll use the points there because it was a slight difference between clean versus pressure, okay? This is when it gets bad. 2023, 87 down to 35.
Wow.
A 52-point drop. Like, against pressure, he would have done better spiking the ball into the ground than trying to actually pass it. He would have had a better passer rating if on every time he was pressured, he just spiked the ball into the ground. I don't know if you hear a baby in the background or not, but
no, it's all good.
Okay. And then 2024, this last season, 88 when clean, 60 when pressured, 28-point difference. Like, he averaged a 28.8 drop when kept clean versus pressured, which isn't bad, but in the context, he's never breaking 100 to begin with, and he's dropping into the 70, 60, 50 range. Like, that's bad. And so now you're putting behind, yes, the best offensive line he's ever played with, but he doesn't do anything with it anyways. Like, I'd rather take my chances on the freak athlete with top 5 athletic and arm tools than some middling mediocre quarterback who has been one of the most, I don't want to say mid because he's not even mid. He's just very below average and is one of the most below average QBs since the 2000s. Like, he's just not a good QB. And I didn't like when the Giants took him. I didn't like that. Like, he had a great game against the Bucs his first game in, but after that, didn't do anything else. Had a good 2022 season, but that was Dable being Dable and scheming up an offense because he knew his limitations.
Yep.
And then shame on Dable trying to push the envelope the next 2 years. Like, it's just not a good quarterback. And I just, if the Colts are trying to get to the playoffs, because they do have a playoff roster outside of the quarterback position, I think Anthony Richardson wins you 1 or 2 more games than Daniel Jones does based on his athleticism alone. But he's also going to lose you 1 or 2 more games. So you kind of have to pick your poison.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned, pass rating not being the most important stat, but like you said, not being able to break 100 in your career, like, that's a benchmark you have to hit. And Daniel Jones didn't hit that, so it's like, what's next? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if I can pull it up, just give me a second. I can go to 2019, and we can do 1,000 QB plays, and we go weeks 1 to 18, right? We're just going to look at EPA from 2019 to 2024. So 6-year sample size, at least 1,000 dropbacks. And there are how many quarterbacks on the list? There's 45 quarterbacks on this playlist. His EPA and completion percentage over expected composite ranks 36 out of 45. His EPA per play ranks 38. His adjusted EPA per play, 38. Success rate is 32nd. Completion rate over expected is 27th. Air yards is 42nd. Like, he's a bottom feeder amongst a lot of these quarterbacks. Like, push has to come to shove somewhere. Like, he's obviously not a good quarterback, and I'm not saying Anthony Richardson is, but at least he gives you a higher ceiling and a more multiple offense than Daniel Jones could ever provide, even in his best season.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about this team outside of quarterback. You kind of feel like they've put together a solid roster. Obviously, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, solid receiving core. How can they elevate, some maybe below average quarterback play?
I think just the fact they all have differing skill sets is like what's best, right? And like, even though they're all differing, like, you can pretty much plug and play these guys wherever alignment, maybe not X, but like Z, slot, H-back, tight end. Like, you can put most of them anywhere and they're going to do better, right? Like, Michael Pittman is your X. Like, he's your big body. Go up and get a guy who can, has some shiftiness to get open. Josh Downs is your slot / Z receiver. Alec Pierce is your deep threat. Adonai Mitchell can go anywhere pretty much. He played X Texas. I think he could play X in the NFL. Can go in the slot, can go into Z, do whatever. Then you bring in Tyler Warren, who's the best tight end they've had since Dallas Clark in 2011. And that's not accounting for Eric Ebron's anomaly season where he had like 13 touchdowns or something like that. Like, Tyler Warren is the best prospect they've ever taken at tight end since 2000 minus Dallas Clark. Like, he's a freak. And like, yeah, like, he is on the other side. He didn't break out until he was 22 years old, but like, he's still a good football player. And if the preseason games show it, he's probably going to lead this team in targets. Like, especially if Daniel Jones is the quarterback and he needs an uber reliable target underneath. Like, Tyler Ward is perfect for that. So I think the weapons are perfectly set up. They have a pretty deep rushing attack. They got Jonathan Taylor. Is Trey Sermon still on this team? I forget if he is or not. I can look it up. But they have DJ Giddens, who they just took out of Kansas State, who's like almost the perfect spellback for Jonathan Taylor. He had some off-field maturity stuff, like nothing, like he didn't commit crimes or do anything stupid, but like just maturity, stupid college kid stuff. Like,
yeah,
he probably would have been an early day 2 pick if not for some of the stories that were coming out about him in terms of like locker room presence and some of the stuff that happened with some of his teammates. But like, it's the NFL. Those are things that the NFL can work out of you. If you're just a degenerate asshole who beats women and assaults family members, like, yeah, sorry, that's not going to happen. Like, that's another conversation for another pod. But yeah, the offense is good. The offensive line is great. Quentin Nelson is finally back to all-pro caliber play. Braden Smith, really solid veteran. And then a really good developmental core of Bernard Rainman, Tanner Bortolini, and Mac Gonsalves are all really solid. And then they have depth with rookie Jalen Travis, who I had a high grade on, and Danny Pinner. Like, really, really solid core of an offensive line. They're 7 deep, which a lot of teams can't say that. And they're multiple. Like, Tanner can play any spot, interior O-line. Mac Gonsalves can play tackle if need be. Jalen Travis and Danny Pinner obviously tackle and guard / center respectively. Like, just a really solid offense in general.
This Colts defense, I wanted to talk about. They were bottom 5 in the league last year. However, there were a couple teams, in their own division that were, kind of close by. Obviously, the Jaguars were probably one of the second worst teams. But then the Texans were obviously a top 10 squad, and the Titans were just kind of, middling. Well, actually, no, the Titans were pretty solid, but defensively, where do you feel like they've made improvements, or maybe they've come up short in the offseason?
I think just adding more pass rushers, bringing in Lou from the Bengals is going to be solid, and just not like the problem with the defense last year is that like they just try to straight up rush and not really run any stunts or run any extravagant blitzes. Like, they played everything kind of safe, where they didn't really have outside of DeForest Buckner and sometimes Leatu Latu. They didn't really have the juice to do that, right? Like, Grover Stewart, good nose tackle, is fine as a pass rusher, not great. Kwity Paye has not developed well at all. So they go and get JT Tuimoloau. I'm going to mess his name up. Tuimoloau from Ohio State, who has been a freak since his freshman year there. They go and get him. Samson Ebukam is a good, like, designated pass rusher who can fill in here and there. And then they have some depth pieces in Adedomiwa Adebawore and Taekwon Lewis. Like, they have inside-outside flexibility. Like, they're probably going to play 200 snaps between the both of them, but, like, they still provide depth to run different things if needed, right? So, like, based on this count, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that can get after the passer at any given point, and they just weren't used effectively last year. Like, I know JT wasn't on the team last year, but, like, same thing. Like, now he's on the team. He's a good pass rusher, a lot more power-based than people give him credit for, but this is a really, really good pass rushing defensive line. And I know, like, we look at total yards when, like, we determine defensive quality, but this defense was better than what their total yards said. And we'll get into the Titans later, but their defense was actually worse than what the total yards said. And we'll get into that when we talk about the Titans later this episode. But even with that, the linebacker core is probably the weakest point. They have Zaire Franklin, who's a solid Mike linebacker, but kind of falls into the trope of, oh, he makes a lot of tackles, so he's top 10. Like, no, he's not top 10. He's good and he's solid, but he's not like this. He's not a difference maker on this defense in terms of, like, a linebacker who is the focal point and you better not throw or run anywhere over the middle. He's just not, but he's still good. Jalen Carlisle out of Missouri last year converted safety into linebacker. He's going to be the will backer. So the coverage from the linebacker should actually be improved this season. And then the secondary is vastly underrated in my opinion. Kenny Moore II is a top 3 nickel in the NFL. He has been for the past 4 years. He's just a really good slot defender. They get Charvarius Ward, which is just a home run of a free agent signing. I know he had some injury stuff, but we're looking at a top 10 corner over the past 3 to 4 years. Just very, very solid and has played with several teams in that span. Cam Bynum is pretty experienced and not playing for Lou, but he played in a similar defense in that fire zone style that we talked about last episode, or 2 episodes ago. He has experience in that when he was playing with the Vikings. Brian Flores and Lou kind of run that similar defense. And then Nick Cross, young developing safety, he's pretty good. And then they're deep at corner. They got Jalen Jones, who was underrated. Juju Brent, who's still developing and has had some issues, but should be better. And then Xavier Howard, who's just a veteran, a good body to be in there, who has played in this style of defense before. So, the secondary is underrated and is better than people expect. The pass rush is going to be much better this year. Just that's adding a few more pieces of talent. Latu developing and running a completely different pressure package than they're used to is going to open up pass rush lanes for them. So as long as the linebackers do well and Zaire and Jalen don't get hurt, we're looking at a unit that could be top 12 and be pretty decent. Despite what the box score says, if we look at their efficiency ranks, which they weren't great in terms of efficiency, but if we just look at 2024 while this thing takes a minute to load because it's on this jank ass system, but it's really good data once it does pull up. I mean, we're looking at the Colts EPA per play allowed. They were 14th. This is a defense that was cracking into the top 12 territory. And drop back EPA was probably the worst part. They were 23rd, but rush defense, they were 10th, in terms of these stats. So yes, on paper, they didn't look good, but they were also on the field a lot more because the offense couldn't get yards and they couldn't get moving. And Anthony Richardson, 50% of his incompletions were his fault. It's not like it was a drop or a tip pass where he got hit. No, he just missed. That's bad, right? So when you put all that together, this defense is going to be better, and they're not being talked a lot about because we look at the yardage and we're like, oh, they allowed a lot of yards. Yeah, well, they were on the field more than anybody else. They're going to allow more yards it's math. No team this would have. There was a defense a couple of years ago. The offense was absolute dog shit, but they were the best defense in the league, and they were constantly on the field. And they got into the playoffs and just lost in the first round because it might have been a Steelers team, honestly, with Kenny Pickett running at the helm. But
yeah, that sounds right.
I think it was a Steelers team. It was that year they got the Chiefs they went up 14-0 in the first quarter, and then the Chiefs ran it up 42-14 or something like that.
Wait, was that not a Texans team?
I don't think so, because it was a TJ Watt touchdown. I remember that. Maybe the Chiefs were up big and he got a touchdown in the first quarter or something like that. I don't know. All I know is
Texans do that against the Chiefs one year.
I think the Texans did, but this is pre CJ Stroud. This is the Deshaun Watson era.
Got it.
But either way, this defense is going to be better than people expect, and especially this pass rush. I think the pass rush is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to the offense a little bit, your dark horse is a guy. We've kind of talked about how this offense can kind of help elevate. The offense outside of quarterback can really help elevate the quarterback position. And obviously this guy that's your dark horse is really important for that. He's an interior offensive lineman. Can you kind of go into some detail about him?
Yeah, Matt Gonsalves, fun fact, I went to West Hampton Beach High School. I did not play in the same time frame as him, but he went to ESM, Eastport South Manor, who's our crosstown rival. Yeah, so I don't know him personally, but there's that, connection there. But I remember following him from ESM because he was just bigger than everybody else. Long Island football is not that good compared to the rest of the country, and it's very rare someone his size even plays at a school like that. So, 6'6", 300 pounds coming out of high school is just, that's going to get attention. Played at Pitt. He's in the upper, we talked about the oversized guards a little bit last episode. He fits that bill. He's 6'6", 320 to 330 pounds. And there's a good trend of that, Trey Smith, Tyler Smith, Mekhi Becton, guys that have history at tackle and got moved inside and thrive at guard. He could be the next to continue that trend. And he started the back half of the season at tackle. filling in for Braden Smith. He did a good job as a run blocker, but really struggled in pass pro. I believe he allowed 19 pressures over the last 7 games, which is not good at all. But I think moving him inside next to Braden Smith, and then you have Tanner Bortolini, who was one of the most athletic centers in the league. Even though he didn't play a lot, he still showcased that he is super athletic and has just great run blocking and pass blocking ability due to his foot quickness. Putting those two together, like two completely different blocking styles of blocking types, I think is actually going to help him develop. And then you have the veteran presence to the outside of him. Like, I think he's going to do really, really well in this offense, in this offensive line. And, you know, and even if, like, let's say, like, he can't learn anything from those two, he's got Quentin Nelson, who's one of the best guards in the league, and they play the same position. Like, yeah, different sides, but, like, relatively the same position with the same steps, reads, pull reads, like all that. Like, he can learn a lot from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Long Island football, who was that quarterback? He played for Notre Dame and then Wisconsin.
Jack Cohn.
Jack Cohn.
Yeah, Sayville. I played against him. He was a freshman when I was a junior, and he, oh my God, he might have been the best quarterback I've ever seen live at a high school level. He was filthy.
Wow.
Live. Like, granted, there's a lot better quarterbacks than him, but he was really good. I know I forget if it was Matt Sims or Phil Sims, but he would work with him, and he thought Jack Cohn had more. And this is from, you know, not from whichever Sims it was, not from them directly, but I heard through the grapevine that he actually liked Jack Cohn better than Trevor Lawrence because he trained both, and he actually thought he had Jack Cohn had better, you know, ability as a passer. Obviously, that didn't pan out for him, you know, but still, like, he was also the hardest quarterback to sack I've ever had in my career. Like, it was
really
hitting him was literally a brick wall because he had such a strong lower half where, like, some quarterbacks would just fold, like, if you hit them the right way. And I would come in, like, and I knew he was, like, solid, so I would even get lower and try to wrap the legs and, like, literally would, like, be stepping through me, wrapping him up. I'm like, is this guy serious? Like, just a freak quarterback talent. It sucks it didn't work out for him, but, you know, that's what happens in the NFL sometimes.
Yeah, dude, tough league.
Even Jamarcus Russell didn't pan out, and he was supposed to be a generational talent. You know, like, it just happens, you know.
Yeah. Well, I always try to keep an eye on the Long Island guys, so hopefully
appreciate that.
Hands out. The big question for the Texans is, or sorry, not for the Texans, for the Colts is, you know, can they get through this season without making some big changes at the leadership level?
I think they can, but you got to make playoffs.
Yep.
Like, that means you have to be at least on par with the Texans, which is going to be a tall. It's going to be tough to foot that bill, right? Like, because the Texans are the Texans. They're going to be much better this year than last year, especially offensively. So you have to keep pace with them. And then you also have to at least have a functional offense, which I don't know if Daniel Jones can offer. And look, maybe this is going to be one of those Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold situations where they just need to change the scenery. They need different coaching, and they push forward and they become this great veteran presence that is going to get a mega deal next year. Who knows? I could be totally wrong. But those quarterbacks at least had upside in terms of arm strength, processing, athleticism. Like, they had upside somewhere, and they just needed to get weaponized and leveraged correctly. Daniel Jones has never had that. Like, in that same draft class, Daniel Jones was not at the same level as Kyler Murray. The year before, Sam Darnold was being talked about as a first-round draft pick and had the numbers and the tape to back it up. Daniel Jones never had that. So, like, if they plan on starting Daniel Jones the whole season and they don't make playoffs, Ballard's gone. I'm pretty sure Steichen's going to be gone because he's had 4 different QBs play since he's taken over, and none of them have worked. So, see you later, which would be awesome for the Eagles because they would take him back in a heartbeat. But yeah, I just don't. I don't see them sticking around if Daniel Jones is the starter. If Anthony Richardson wins the job back, learns from his mistakes, protects the ball, and they have a similar record to what they would have had with Daniel Jones, then I think it's a different story. Because then it's like, okay, Anthony Richardson is improving. He's showing he's making progress. Let's try one more run of it. Give him a couple more weapons. give him some help on defense to be on the field more often, and let's see how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's move into Duval. Possibly like the greatest clip, like the greatest press conference clip of the decade. I don't know.
Yep.
We'll have to do some more research on that. But let's move into it. Talk about Liam Cohen taking over this Jacksonville Jaguars team. What is the bar for the Jaguars this year?
I think the offense is going to be really good. The defense, not so much, but the offense should be really, really good. I think this is the most competent offensive coordinator that Trevor Lawrence has ever worked with in his career. They also have James Gladstone, who has a really good draft history of his time at the Rams. And yeah, he's young. He's 35, and he looks like he just went to prom last night. Like, he's a young dude. But when you bring in two guys who Liam runs a super efficient offense and Gladstone is a super analytical guy who has a great eye for prospects, like, you're looking at a tandem that should be together for the next decade plus. Like, and that's not hyperbole. Like, if this offense does what they're supposed to do and what he's done with the Rams, with Kentucky, with Tampa Bay, and Gladstone can continue to bring in talent, which the Jaguars have sucked at because Trent Baalke is just one of the worst GMs ever and should never have a GM job again or front office job again. Let's make it that extreme. This team should turn a corner. Now, it's not going to turn a corner this year, at least as a team. Offensively, it absolutely should. Because they're deep in a lot of spaces except offensive line, but offensive line could be helped by scheme. But I guess we can kind of just roll into the offense from there. I mean, there are some question marks, but, namely, like, who's the RB1 going to be? Is it going to be Travis Etienne? Is he finally over the Linsfrank injury? And can he be as productive as he was 2 years ago? Will Tanks Bigsby come in and be this great, super efficient pass-catching back who just gets more reps? Will it be Basel Tuden, the rookie who has big-time home run ability and actually has pretty good wiggle between the tackles? Can he take reps from one of those two? I didn't put him in the notes, but LaQuint Allen is another guy, just a massive running back, really good in pass pro and a good pass catcher. Can he get those reps? Like, they have 4 running backs they can leverage and use. How's the offensive line going to shape up? Like Wyatt Millum, who they just drafted, is going to challenge Ezra Cleveland for starting snaps. And when they traded for Ezra Cleveland, I was even like, that's weird. But, that's why they drafted Wyatt Millum, to win those reps. And then Anton Harrison and Walker Little, who I like them coming out of college. They haven't really developed. They just need to be above average and give Trevor Lawrence time. And that's all they need this offense to do, is use your playmakers in the run game, abuse the shit out of the pass game, which we'll get into Travis Hunter a little bit later towards the end of the segment. But really, it's going to be how this running back committee is used, who's going to be in the Bucky role, who's going to be in the Rashad White role, who's going to be the Sean Tucker role. And then, because besides Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gadecki, the Bucs offensive line was not that good, but the scheme made them better. I think that's going to happen here, where I liked Anton Harrison a lot. I actually had a higher grade on him than Parrish Johnson, which in hindsight might be a little ridiculous. And my models changed, so it might be a little different than that now. Like, it might be flipped. But I liked Anton Harrison a lot coming out of college. Walker Little, I thought, had starter ability. He hasn't really showcased that. But, the offensive line could get put together nicely with the scheme, being at least halfway decent.
Yeah, you talk about how the Buccaneers scheme kind of helps account for some of the inconsistencies of the offensive line. But I kind of want to talk about Trevor Lawrence specifically. Where do you feel like Trevor Lawrence in year 5 would really excel in a Liam Cohen scheme?
I think just taking what's there rather than forcing something. And a lot of that has been because he hasn't had the weapons to be able to actually run a full-fledged progression type offense, right? Like, the closest he ever had was Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram and Zay Jones back in, was it 23? He had those 3 guys there. Zay Jones might have been gone by then, but he had guys who were kind of just like career second tier options. Evan Ingram's had a lot of drop problems. Zay Jones was just kind of a guy. Christian Kirk came from Arizona, was like kind of a slot, kind of a Z, didn't really know what to do with him. And they all had career years under Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think that's by mistake. I think he is a good quarterback. And we'll talk about him a little bit later as well. But I mean, I think the next step for him is just taking what's there, allowing his playmakers to get open, and stop throwing so many damn hospital balls. Like, if you look at the preseason game with Brian Thomas Jr., like, one of the first throws he threw, Brian Thomas Jr. could have had his head taken off. Like, that's something that's become more of a theme, is that he's throwing these really just ill-informed passes that he shouldn't be making for someone of his caliber, right? Like, and I'm not going to say Trevor Lawrence is top 10, but I think people are already writing him off as a bust when he's had some of the worst situations that any just quarterback in general has had to deal with, between Urban Meyer just being an absolute failure, Doug Peterson after 2022 just not coaching a good offense or running a good offense with that, and just the shortcomings everywhere else on the offense. Like, there's only so much you can do as a quarterback. You know, the only quarterbacks I've really seen truly elevate their offenses when they've had like no real star power is, you know, obviously Jaden Daniels had Terry McLaurin, but other than that, you know, he did well with that. CJ Stroud, no one was counting the Texans in. CJ Stroud elevated that offense. And I'm trying to think, there was someone in like the mid 2010s, or I mean, even Matt Stafford, you say the Lions were 0-16. They draft him and they start to at least be somewhat competitive. You know what I mean? Like, while their roster was still trying to figure it out. So like, there's quarterbacks who can do it. And I think the expectation was Trevor could, and he hasn't met that expectation yet, but that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback.
No, I mean, dude, like Trevor Lawrence too, like think about how highly he was like touted in college, right? Like people were like, this is the guy. And like he really has not been bad, but it's just like, you know, he hasn't been the guy anymore. But it's like, you know,
he had shades of it in 2022. He had shades of it. It just hasn't worked out since then, you know, and that's what happened. Like, when you're a freshman and you lead a team to a national championship, and it's not like, you know, like that defense was loaded, right? Like, so we can say, yeah, the defense was the focal point, but Trevor was the focal point of that offense. Yeah. Like, you know, and that's tough to kind of overcome that when you get into the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the defense. A lot of talent there, but it doesn't really feel like there's like a focal point. Where do you feel like a leader can emerge on this defensive unit?
I think because you have Josh Hines-Allen and Foye Oluokun, who are solid veterans who are very, very good at what they do. But they don't really have anyone else after that. Like, Eric Armstead was really good with the 49ers, but is kind of on the tail end of his career, so it can't really be him. Devin Lloyd, I think, is still too young and still trying to develop, so it may not be him either. But two guys I want to look at are Tyson Campbell and Trayvon Walker. And Trayvon, obviously number 1 overall pick, should have been Aiden Hutchinson in my opinion. But, you know, they've been wanting him to develop, and they took him as like a project and like a high ceiling player. This is like when like ceiling dominated draft cycles. Like, oh, draft ceiling, draft intangibles, draft traits. Like, don't just draft based on tape or combines or measurements. Like, and it was very apparent Aiden Hutch was better than him. And so far in the NFL, Aiden Hutch has been better. And I think the easiest way to look at that is pressure rate and pass rush win rate. Like, Trayvon, his first 3 years, out of the 68 pass rushers that I did a whole breakdown model of. I think we talked about it in one of the first or second episodes on this show. Of the 68 defensive linemen that have played over 1,000 snaps the past 3 years, he is dead middle in pressure rate at 11.04%. He ranks 39th. Actually, not dead middle. He's below average. And then pass rush win rate at 10.67. He's 46 out of 68. Like, he can't even break into the top half. Like, he's not close. Yeah. So I think he gets sacks, and everyone would look at sacks and be like, oh yeah, he's a good pass rusher. He's figured it out. But like, has he? Like, can he win consistently enough to keep that sack total up? Like, I'm not sure. You know, year 4, we'll see what happens. The other guy is Tyson Campbell, who is great when he's healthy, but he hasn't been healthy recently. I think he's someone who could step up in the secondary and on this defense in general. Funny, I bring up 2 Georgia players as the, you know, leaders for what this defense could be, but there's a reality to that, you know. I think there's some good starters and role players mixed in. You know, I touched on Eric Armstead and Devin Lloyd. Jordan Lewis is going to be the nickel on this team. He's got a lot of experience. Eric Murray is the safety, another guy, a ton of experience. Dennis Gardeck is going to be a designated pass rusher. I don't think he's going to get any starting reps, but if Trayvon or Josh Hines need a breather, or they just want to bring in like, a penny front and they want to put him in, yeah, sure, put him in. Devon Hamilton, a nose tackle, has been in the league forever, decent, like will play a role. They have the role players on defense to do fine, but it's going to be another year or two until this defense really becomes what they were when they were Saxonville with Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey, AJ Bouye, like Telvin Smith, excuse me, Paul Posluszny, like that defense is nowhere near that right now. But again, that might start to change, and that might start to change specifically with Travis Hunter.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into Travis Hunter. Obviously, we talked about the offense, we talked about the defense, and now we're going to get into the guy that loves to be both. And, famously, obviously he still hasn't played like, a regular season game, so there's still plenty of time for this. But in college, there was a strong contingency of people that were like, he's going to have to choose when he gets to the NFL. You can't do this against NFL offenses or defenses, right? He's not ready to make that choice yet, and maybe he never will, and maybe he'll never have to. But for you, is there anything that you've seen from Travis Hunter in terms of preseason games or what you've read and seen from training camp that you feel like maybe he'll lean one way or the other this season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we look at that first preseason game he played in, because he didn't play in the second one, I believe he played 12 offensive snaps and 8 defensive snaps on the 20 snaps he got. And I believe he only played like a quarter or maybe like a little bit into the second quarter, right?
Yeah.
But, I think that's kind of what we're going to expect from him throughout the season. And I was with you. Like, I was like, he's going to have to choose. He's going to have to pick a side. But I'm like, well, he did it.
Oh, I wasn't saying I wasn't
saying.
Oh,
no. But I'm saying that's a point you brought up. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
that was a point you brought up. People have said it in the media, right? Like,
yeah.
I was kind of with them, but as the season's gone on, I'm like, if they can use him in both, why not? Like, you get he's already a damn good corner and is going to be a really good corner for a long time. He's raw as a receiver, but was still one of the best receivers in college football last year and rightfully won the Heisman. Like, even though I flipped towards the Heisman selection and I wanted Ashton Genty, like, it's still insane that Travis Hunter played at such a high level at 2 of the hardest positions in the sport, right? So, so early reports from camp indicate he'll play 80% of offensive snaps, and then he'll fill in as a perimeter corner in nickel and dime packages on defense, which if they're going to run nickel a lot, which most teams do now, he's going to be on the field 70% of the time. So you're looking at a guy who's going to play around 100 snaps a game, if not more. It's not that he hasn't done that, but doing it at the NFL is different, where Colorado ran a simple offense and a simple defense. The NFL is much more complex, especially a Liam Cohen offense. Like, this is going to be his biggest learning curve will be offense, because defense, he's been playing it his whole life. He'll pick it up as he goes along, and that's why they want to use him in the nickel packages. I think they want him to play on offense more so he can get into a rhythm on offense and they can see what they have in him, and that could change week to week, based on packages, matchups, as he learns the offense, he may not play as many snaps as they're currently saying, but I think the goal is for him to play 80% at the end of the season. So if they have 1,000 offensive snaps, he's played on 800, which is a really, really tall, task for anyone, a rookie in the NFL alone, let alone a guy who plays both sides of the ball. Now, where I think if they've minimized his offensive usage, a spot where I can see him really thriving is when he's putting him in motion. And whether he's in motion and settles, or he's in motion at the snap, whether it's a cheat motion or a jet or a fast motion, like whatever it is, like, use his speed and versatility, because he's got a lot of it and he's got good enough ball skills where if he's on the move on a motion, he can catch the ball or make a play. Use his speed, versatility, and let him just use his natural ball skills to make a play while on the move. Like, that could be I think that's worst case scenario. He'll be like a package offensive guy. He'll get 10 to 15 snaps a game, but I think he'll play good amount of offense, good amount of defense. And by his third year, he might even be playing full-time both ways, because he did it in college. Once he learns the offense and defense, and granted, NFL is different. You're going against grown-ass men. Are you going to come downhill and tackle Derrick Henry 10 times a game and then go out on offense and try to run past Patrick Surtain or Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley and try to beat them? Because he's going to play them. They're all in the AFC right now. He's going to have to compete against these guys. Can he do it snap per snap where, some guys he would go against are going to be future accountants or running a marketing firm, it's just completely different animals. But I'm leaning more towards that he'll be able to do it because of who Travis is, the work ethic he has. He's a top tier athlete, like just a dog. And yeah, I think he's going to figure it out. If not this year, he'll figure it out by year 2 and 3.
So you kind of stole my next question there. You kind of answered it, where I kind of wanted to bring up a term that's a little bit taboo in some NBA circles, and that being load management. You mentioned, obviously, the sheer amount of snaps that he'd have to take if he wanted to play a regular amount of offense and a regular amount of defense. Obviously, he was pretty comfortable doing that in college, but in college, a national championship winning or losing team, just a team that plays, the same amount of games, in the regular season plus the 3 or 4 games now that you have to play in the college football playoff, that's still only like 16, 17, maybe 18 games. An NFL team, whether you go 17-0 or 0-17, like you're still playing 17 games. Like that's a lot more than college, obviously. So for a guy like Travis Hunter, do you think there's ever going to be a discussion where, if he wants to get a good amount of offensive and defensive snaps in a game, there's going to be talk of maybe him sitting a game in the regular season? Like maybe they're 2 games in the playoffs spot, and they feel like, they're going up against like a 3-14 team. Like, do you think there's maybe a chance that they'd rest him?
I don't know if they would rest him from a game, but I would say rest from one side of the ball or play minimal snaps on one side of the ball. Like if the Jaguars, like let's say he's starting more or playing more as a corner than he is a receiver, right? Like, or excuse me, other way around. Let's say he's playing more as a receiver than he is a corner, right? And they need him in offense because there's just mismatches all over that they can take advantage of and exploit with Brian Thomas Jr. there and Travis Hunter there, and they're going against, a rough secondary. And they think they can skate by on defense based on whoever they're playing on offense. I could see a reality where he plays all the offensive snaps and then only comes in on dime packages on defense, which is maybe 10 snaps a game, right? Like I could see that. I don't think he would ever get a full rest. I think that would just open up a whole can of worms across the league. That would be really bad for the sport. And I don't think anyone wants that. And NFL is very much like football's a sport where like, if you can play, you're going to play. Like they're not going to rest you just to rest you unless you're coming up on a bye week and they want to give you the extra week. Like that's really the only time you see load management is like someone gets hurt week 3 is projected to come back week 8, but they have a week 9 bye. More often than not, teams are going to rest them to get the extra week and then the bye on top of it. Instead of trying to rush them back, they hit a setback and now they only have a week to recover before practice resumes, right? Like that's really the only time you see load management in the NFL. I don't know why my camera keeps going in and out of focus, but whatever. That's really the only way I can see a load management happening. And then obviously vice versa for offense. Like if they think they're just going to ground and pound a team the whole game and they don't need him to line up at receiver because he's just going to block a lot, which spoiler alert, he's not a good blocker. Or at least in college, he wasn't a willing blocker. That might change now that he's in the NFL and Liam Cohen demands his receivers block because he's part of that Sean McVay tree. But then he can play defense a ton and, be a perimeter corner on every single down because they have a really good receiver they want to take advantage of, and match him up on so Tyson Campbell can get freed up and just play his game against a worse receiver as he continues to come back from injury. I think that's kind of what's going to happen. But again, that's worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into your dark horse. It's a guy that we've already talked about considerably in this segment, and that's Trevor Lawrence. We talked about his scheme. We've talked about a lot of his weapons. But now, the ball is really in his hands. Like, how can he really become – this is also our burning question here. How can he really become a top 10 quarterback in this league?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be the best receiving core he's ever had, right? Obviously, you got Brian Thomas Jr. Even if Travis Hunter doesn't play, you have De'Ami Brown as your wide receiver too, who popped off with the Commanders last year. Parker Washington has really looked great during camp and showed some flashes last year to be a really solid slot receiver. They're trusting Brennan Strange as their starting tight end, which early reports from camp and what I've seen in preseason tape, he moves really, really well after the catch. And I did not see that when I scouted him in college. He looks really solid. Like Tucker Kraft level ability to move after the catch right now, which is a part of his game I haven't seen yet. So I think that core, along with the rushing game and the rushing attack, I think Trevor Lawrence can take that next step. I think I would say top 12. I don't know if I would say top 10 as definitively as I want to, but even let's look at his ranks from 2022 to 2024. So the post-Urban Meyer debacle from his rookie year, okay? Of all quarterbacks, he ranks 13th in EPA per play, 14th in adjusted EPA per play, and 15th in EPA plus completion percentage over expected composite, right? So top 12 numbers there, or excuse me, top 16 numbers there. So top half of the league, okay? This is where it starts to get a little better. He was 9th in success rate and 9th in air yards. So again, he's not a dink and dunk quarterback. He's pushing the ball vertically downfield. And then as far as PFF is concerned, he's 13th, 15th, and 19th in passing grade in each of the past 3 years, respectively. Is regressing a bit from a PFF perspective, but in terms of EPA, he's still he's pushing for top 12, right? And this is the best unit he's ever had. He played with one horrible play caller, then he went to a mediocre one. Now he's going to go to a really friggin' good one, right? And most of the receivers, and we talked about this earlier, most of the receivers he's played with had career years, and that's highlighted by Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Zay Jones. And all that was 2022 and 2023. All had really good years. And the receiver room's rounded out. The O-line should be fine. Running game is going to be solid. This has the makings of people starting to take Trevor Lawrence seriously and be like, oh shit, yeah, he's actually a good QB. And which he is. Anyone that doesn't say that is kidding themselves, right? Most QBs in the NFL are good. Let's just keep it real. It's very rare that a quarterback in the NFL today is not good. The problem is we're comparing them to Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning. I'm sure I'm missing one of the not old guys, but when we were growing up, I'm missing someone. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, right? Those were the top quarterbacks. I was gonna say, shout out Case, college football rock star. But when you look at those quarterbacks, that's what we think. So now we only have 4 guys really that are at that level, if that. And they aren't even real gunslingers. They just play quarterback really well in today's NFL. That's what people compare it to. And so when you're slightly below the other quarterbacks that are slightly below the top guys, everyone thinks you're bad. And that's not necessarily the case. We have more middle tier there's more middle tier quarterbacks than top tier quarterbacks than there was back then. Does that make sense? Right.
And it's one of those things where it's I don't think we fully understand what makes a great quarterback in this current era of the NFL because we're still in it. So in 5, maybe 7 to 8 years time, we're going to have a better answer. And we'll probably be able to talk about Trevor Lawrence as one of those guys. Whenever we finish that rubric, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to fit it very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to your point about what makes good quarterback play, there's so much more that goes into it now than there used to be. There's so many different types of offenses where everything was pretty much pro style, get under center, get an I formation, get into gun. That era revolutionized the gun formation and made it a staple. Now we're seeing that as the epitome of the NFL, where almost every team is getting in gun 60 to 70% of the time. And if you're getting under center, it's because you have a good run game and you have a smart offensive coordinator. So you can't just look at teams that don't get in gun as it's not a good quarterback. Some of it's play calling, some of it's system, some of it's supporting cast. There's so much more that goes into it now, I think. And especially with the different types of offenses and, I just think it's so different now, and it's crazy to say because this was just over a decade ago. The league was so different, but
I mean, and those guys, those names that we mentioned, barring Case Keenum, they also bled into the era that we're talking about now that we're still trying to figure out. So it's there's a lot of changeover.
Absolutely.
Tom Brady wouldn't get out of the freaking league.
Yeah, exactly. It's There and that's like that alone has shifted rank because we've never seen one single player dominate in the championships as much as in Super Bowls as Tom Brady has. So like that's also worked. Like ring culture has become such a big topic, which we've talked about multiple times on this show. Like I think that's diminishing actual football and quarterback evaluation. Is like when people just default to rings and that's all they care about. Like sorry, not every team's going to win a championship. Dan Marino never won a championship, and he's probably a top 5 quarterback all time. Like. Yeah. You can't diminish if Dan Marino played in today's NFL, I'm sorry, he's outperforming Mahomes. And I know Mahomes' box score hasn't been great, but he's still a good quarterback. But if you put Dan Marino in that Chiefs offense, they are never losing a Super Bowl. I guarantee you that. He was so freaking – and I'm not saying that Dan Marino is better than Pat Mahomes. Like at least projecting-wise, like Mahomes will probably be better than him projecting. But Dan Marino wins at the minimum 4 Super Bowls if he's the Chiefs quarterback in this type of offense that's designed. Like, he was filthy.
I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
No, I don't think so either.
Let's get into our final team of the day, and that being the Tennessee Titans. They obviously finished in last place last year. They were obviously one of the worst teams in the league, 3-14. They picked up Cam Ward. They said they kind of closed the book on the Will Levis era. Cam Ward is, fantastic quarterback out of Miami. What are you liking out of him?
He is. I think I said it early this episode. I don't like repeating like phrases that I say, but man, he's got an absolute piss missile for an arm. And not just arm strength, but like arm slots, arm angles, throwing in structure, throwing out of structure. It feels like he could be in the worst position. Like he could be like bending over backwards. And he could just go like this, and that ball's flying 40 yards. Like it is for the listeners at home who aren't watching. I leaned all the way back in my chair, so I'm parallel with the ground. Like He could be like that and flick the ball with his wrist and get it 40 yards out. Like Aaron Rodgers type ability to just rip a ball with minimal movement and minimal wasted movement. Like he's really good. He also brings great leadership to the locker room. Like if you watch some of the videos of him, like in press conferences and addressing the team after practice, like. He is the guy in that locker room. He is the leader. And I would not be shocked if he's not wearing a C on his chest as a rookie. We're seeing that a lot more, especially for rookie quarterbacks. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to have a C on his chest heading into the season. And the biggest piece about him, he's a decisive decision maker, right? Like bad leaders aren't bad because they make bad decisions. Bad leaders are bad because they make no decisions, right? Like Cam Ward's the opposite of that. He's a good football player and he's a great leader because he makes decisions and he owns up to it. Like this is when I fell in love with him even more was, I don't know if you saw it, but he ripped an absolute perfect pass to Van Jefferson in the preseason game against the Falcons. He fit it between a closing safety and a corner that was trailing the route. Had Van Jefferson literally full extension in his hands, and Van Jefferson dropped it. And, Cam Ward could not have thrown a more perfect ball in that situation. Right after the game, they ask him about it, and he's like, yeah, I got to hit him in the chest. Like, that's on me. Like, I just, like that's just Van and I trying to get a better connection. Like, I'm going to hit him next time right on his chest. And, like, I don't doubt that. If Van Jefferson somehow makes this roster, I do not doubt that Cam Ward, next time he throws him that pass, he's going to hit him right on the numbers. Because, like, that's so rare. Not rare, but, like, for a quarterback in his not his first game action, but one of his first game actions to rip such a great ball like that and blame himself, like, that's a winner. That's someone I want running my locker room. Like, I don't get, like, I love Kyler. If I could swap those two right now, I absolutely would, because it's not anything against Kyler, right? Like, I think Kyler's a good leader. He's a good quarterback. He's a good athlete. But just in terms of, like, the guy I want in my locker room, oh my God, Cam, like, I would go to war for Cam Ward. He hasn't even played an NFL game yet. Like, and I would absolutely do that. I love this tape, love him, his human, and just like what I've heard. And that like solidified it. I'm like, yeah, I want the Titans to be good now. Like, they might not be good this year, but like, man, I hope they push it.
To me, it also, like, I think that's commendable for him to want to take, like, in my opinion, a controlled risk in a preseason game. Like, why not? Like, why not experiment? Why not see, kind of push the limit of yourself, push the limit of your receiving core in a game that doesn't matter? Like, that's what these games are for. The games are for figuring out your roster, for running some weird plays, like just trying stuff out. So I think that's really impressive. For him to be a risk taker, but also not like, like I said, be in a controlled manner, like knowing when not to take risks. So that's obviously, like you said, a sign of a lot of maturity. Obviously, an offensive line that's really good and really good at protecting you gives you a lot more opportunity to make more of those risks. And although you're saying like he's really good at, making these throws when his body's even at like a 45-degree angle, you don't want that to happen a lot. So how is this offensive line improved in this offseason to help give Cam Ward some cushion to, really just get a feel for himself in 2025?
Yeah, and that starts with the head coach, Brian Callahan, son of Bill Callahan, obviously one of the best offensive line minds ever in NFL history. Brian comes from that tree, and it's not nepotism that he's in the position he is. Like, yeah, probably the initial opportunity, but he is just as good of an offensive line mind as his dad is, and he translates perfectly to this team, right? Like, they loaded up on offensive line. Pete Skoronski is one of the highlights on this offensive line as a young talent. I didn't like him as much coming out of college, but I think he slots in really well at guard, and I was projecting him as a tackle. Obviously, that's not the case. But outside of him, J.C. Latham should have a much better year, too. Struggled a little bit, but they're moving him. We brought this up earlier with Talise Fuaga last episode. They're bringing him from left tackle, putting him at right tackle at his natural position where he dominated some people. Like, I think that's going to be a really good move. They bring in Lloyd Cushenberry III. Last season. Now they bring in Kevin Zeitler this year. So a really impressive interior group with a lot of veteran presence and leadership. And then on the left side at left tackle, you have Dan Moore Jr., who signed a nice deal, but I think he's actually going to battle it out with Jackson Slater this entire year. Jackson Slater is a really good developmental piece out of Sacramento State. I think he's going to be really, really solid in his NFL career. I think Dan Moore just got a deal because that's just what the tackle market was, and they needed one, and they didn't have an answer at tackle, so they just signed him. I don't know if Jackson Slater is going to ever start this year, but I think he's going to get reps at one point or another, whether he's filling in for someone hurt or they just want to experiment with like 6 offensive linemen for whatever friggin' reason. But because some teams do that now. But, I think he could end up being a starter long-term. Over Dan Moore once his contract expires or even before that. But, with that, the depth is lacking. So if any of them get hurt, that's when the Cam Ward stuff is going to come through where he throws under pressure and throws with different arm angles and stuff. But, if they're all healthy, I think this could be a solid unit.
Yeah. And let's talk about the defense and specifically your dark horse, Cody Barton, the linebacker. What do you like at him?
Yeah, man, he's just a fun football player to watch. He had a career year in Denver last season, and the Titans very badly needed a linebacker. So they went out and get him in free agency. I believe he got like a 3-year, almost $40 million deal, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty solid deal for a linebacker. He posted career high grades in run defense and tackling at 79.9 and 84.8 respectively. So pretty much 80 and 85, which are both insanely good. He had 32 stops and TFLs to go with a 5.3% missed tackle rate, which is also really good. He was a bit below average in coverage, but did record 2 interceptions and 2 pass breakups. But he's not going to be as left out to dry in coverage as he was when he was in Denver. He's playing alongside James Williams, who's a converted safety out of Miami. He's like an Isaiah Simmons type build. He was like 6'4", 230 playing free safety, which is just ridiculous. I think he's a little bit better than Isaiah Simmons is right now because Simmons just has not been good at any stop in his career.
Yep.
So I think James Williams will take those will snaps and be asked to cover more of the tight end and slot receivers type guys, where Cody will just focus on running backs and slower body type people over the middle of the field, which I think will be a better fit for him. I think we're going to see a great year out of Cody Barton. And this is a little off tangent, but he has a little brother, Lander Barton. He plays linebacker at Utah, where Cody played. Lander is, if he's not on your draft boards right now, put him on it. He's going to be an early day 2 pick next year. Guy's a freak. And hopefully he has a good year this year and makes good on that, because I love, when I was scouting Caleb Williams, he popped out to me because there was a screen and he took their center, drove him back 3 yards, and literally yanked him and threw him to the ground and made a tackle for like a loss of 7. It was disgusting. And like every time I watch him, like, this kid just gets better and better than that. Like,
yeah.
So Lander is going to be really solid. But to keep it about Cody, similar. He's gotten better and better every year. Cody's in for a career year in his first year in Tennessee.
Love it. And so for Tennessee, I mean, what's a mark of success for them this year? Is it a winning record? Is it just improvement all around? Is it proof that Cam Ward is the next guy, or is it some combination of all three?
I think just improvement offensively, because this defense is a wild card. Like L'Jarius Sneed is coming back from injury. Jeffrey Simmons took a step back last year, but should be good this year again because he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Pass rush, there's a couple question marks here and there, but like offensively, just run a competent offense because they didn't have it last year. And defensively, if we look at their EPA metrics last year, they were bottom of the NFL in EPA in a lot of categories. And we can look at their total run or total defense stats. That's because their punting and special teams were so bad that the field was pretty much not flipping. Like they would punt and returns would come up and the defense would have a short distance to work with. That's why I look at EPA, because it's a more holistic way of looking at actual defensive quality. And this is someone who's skeptical about EPA even 2 years ago. Like I've very much I don't think it's the end all be all, but I think it paints the clearest picture for actual quality, right? And there's a lot of things that go into it, but this defense was bad last year, just plain and simple in terms of efficiency. And that's where I think bringing in someone like Cody Barton and getting L'Jarius Sneed back and Jeffrey Simmons coming back to his normal play style, like adding 3 starters like that who play at a high level, like that's going to improve this defense in and of itself, right? So now it's about getting this offense in a rhythm, continuing to let the offensive line improve, fleshing out the run game through Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, and just using the passing, because they have a good amount of weapons on this offense. Like Chigokwonkwo played better down the stretch at the end of last season, and he's very similar to Elijah Arroyo, who Cam Ward targeted frequently. Calvin Ridley is obviously Calvin Ridley. He's going to go for over 1K again this year because he's going to get 5 million targets. And there's there's legit competition for the wide receiver 2 spot with Alec Aomore, Chimikre. I'm gonna get the name wrong. I'm just gonna pull up their freaking roster. But even one of his favorite targets at Miami, Xavier Restrepo, was fighting for a roster spot, and like he's not like overly athletic, and he doesn't have a big catch radius. But if you put it on him, like he's catching it, and he might make something happen even without that much athleticism. But in terms of this offense, Tyler Lockett, they signed in free agency, just a reliable receiver. Van Jefferson is up there. Chimere Dike, Alec Aomanor, who I brought up earlier. There's some good depth in this receiving room. Gunnar Helm, the tight end out of Texas, is going to be their true Y. And Chig is going to be the H-back, and Chig's going to get those split tight end reps in passing situations. Like, it's making for a pretty okay offense. Now it's just up to Cam Ward to use these guys and make something happen with them, which I am more than confident he has the ability to elevate this team.
Yeah. So we'll see. And that's our 6th division down. We've got 24 teams covered in these 2025 NFL preseason previews. Jordan, thank you again for coming on. These have been fantastic. Your insight is always just incredible, top tier at House Enterprise.
And you do a great job steering the conversation, man. Like
thank you.
It's awesome.
Appreciate it. So if you want to check out more, like if this is your first time tuning in because you just wanted to hear about one of the teams we talked about, we've talked about both Eastern divisions, both Northern divisions, and now we've just covered both Southern divisions. So you can find all of that on houseenterprise.com. You can find it on our YouTube channel where you can listen to the full division breakdown episodes. We've also we've segmented all those teams so far into bite-sized videos on our YouTube channel in a playlist. So if you just want to get caught up on 1 or 2 teams, you can check those out. Make sure you follow us at the socials down below. Follow Jordan at Jordan Laube FB. And then you can follow me at all these socials that you see down below. If you're listening, you can find all of this linked in the description on Spotify. So for Jordan Laube, I'm Sam Basel. This has been the Basel Pod on House Enterprise, and we'll see you guys next time.